Chilean President Sebastián Piñera will present the 2020 public account on his administration this Friday. Hurricane Isaias is moving through the Caribbean region and continues its path towards the United States. Iran's supreme leader has rejected the possibility of negotiations with the United States after Washington threatened to impose further sanctions. From the headquarters of Teleso English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, I'm Katrina Goss. We begin in Chile, where President Sebastián Piñera will present the 2020 public account on his administration this Friday. At 8 p.m. local time, President Piñera will address a session of Congress, offering a review of his administrative and political policies over the past year. Police have announced the closure of streets surrounding Congress. In the face of ongoing social unrest in Chile, the Workers' United Center of Chile Federation called for a national mobilization in rejection of the Piñera administration, including a nationwide pot-banging protest at 9 p.m. Argentinian President Alberto Fernandez has warned that the number of COVID-19 cases is increasing after 6,000 new cases were confirmed on Thursday.
Hasta el 16 de agosto.
Until August 17th, we will keep things as they are. But I can say that over the past few days, we have seen the virus has been going around more, and a higher number of cases has been detected.
Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro announced the opening of a field hospital to treat COVID-19 patients in the capital Caracas this Friday. President Maduro noted that the hospital will have almost 900 beds available to treat COVID-19 patients with mild symptoms and monitor asymptomatic cases. Maduro also offered an update on the number of COVID-19 cases in the country, reporting that 664 locally transmitted cases and 51 imported cases were confirmed over the past 24 hours. Of the imported cases, 46 came from Colombia, 4 from Peru and 1 from Ecuador. The number of coronavirus cases in Mexico continues to rise as the nation became the 6th most affected by the pandemic worldwide. Mexico has now reported more than 416,000 COVID-19 cases and 46,000 deaths. Authorities have reinforced containment measures while health brigades are deployed and medical stations have been set up in regions where possible outbreaks have been detected. Health authorities warn that in the last 2 weeks there has been a slow but steady increase in the number of people hospitalized, which could lead to the collapse of health services in some regions. On Thursday night, the military police of the Brazilian state of Sao Paulo repressed a peaceful demonstration of the homeless workers movement as it approached the Bandeirantes Palace, seat of the state government and the governor's official residence. The demonstration was called to demand that the state governor suspend thousands of evictions during the current economic and health crisis. In response, the military police repeatedly used tear gas to disperse protesters who denounced that this act was even more inhumane under the current circumstances of the coronavirus that attacks the respiratory system of those it infects. And the governor of the Brazilian state of Rio de Janeiro, Wilson Wiltses, is under investigation by local deputies for alleged corruption involving contracts totaling nearly $200 billion. The money was earmarked for the purchase of equipment to combat the pandemic, and the scandal has already led to a former Secretary of Health being jailed. More details in the following report.
El gobierno del estado de Rio de Janeiro anunció que
Rio de Janeiro state government announced it will close its 5 field hospitals exclusively for COVID-19 patients, among them 3 hospitals that never worked. The contract for the construction of these hospitals was analyzed by local deputies and might cost the governor's job.
Y le puede costar el cargo al gobernador.
Aunque parece mucha corrupción.
What seems like a lot of corruption and that makes the process of impeachment of Wilson Witzel begin here in the Legislative Assembly of Rio de Janeiro.
El reo del proceso es el gobernador
The culprit in the process is Governor Wilson Witzel, elected in the conservative wave of 2018 and now considered an enemy by Bolsonaro's supporters, with no support in the local parliament. The opening of the process against the governor was approved unanimously. Meanwhile, the number of weekly cases in Rio de Janeiro increased more than 4 times in the last week and is the second state with the most deaths in the country, more than 13,300 deaths.
What I regret is that there are people still in the middle of the pandemic. I think it's absurd. It's absurd. It's something unacceptable. Corruption is a disease. It is very sad that a person takes advantage of the pandemic to make money legally. It is painful. It is very, very sad.
La comisión del proceso fue formada por un acuerdo.
The process commission was formed by an agreement between all parties, but the Supreme Court suspended the process because the commission did not comply with proportionally. The Assembly responded to the court and is waiting for a new judicial decision. Meanwhile, the left wing calls attention to the fact that Bolsonaro's sector wants impeachment, but also to create institutional tension.
It is very serious and must lead to impeachment, but this must be done by guaranteeing the right to defense and everything within the law. And we cannot allow, as Bolsonaro supporters want, that Brazil leads a process of permanent tension even over justice, over the leaders, because the crisis of democracy interests the Bolsonaro supporters but not the people, not the people.
Los diputados de Río de Janeiro afirman que el problema de la comisión.
Deputies state the Commission's problem is mathematical, not political, and they hope the Supreme Court will indicate a formula for forming a new commission for political judgment. On the other hand, the governor claims that the allegations are false.
André Vieira, Sebastián Soto, Telesur, Brasil.
This Friday morning, Havana city historian Eusebio Leal Spengler passed away, having battled a long illness. The Cuban people showed their respect and expressed their sadness on receiving the news.
He was a man with a wonderful culture, and we owe him a lot for all that he recovered in the historic city center. I just heard the news, and it really is a big loss. A highly educated man, a man who contributed a lot to Cuba and Havana, and we are really going to feel his loss. It's a big loss. The best of the world for him. He was a great historian. I feel sad, that's why I'm seated here. Eusebio Leal is a great person, a very well-educated person, someone who really knew Cuban history and was a wonderful person. My condolences to his relatives and to all those Cubans that mourn the loss of this great Cuban historian.
And our correspondent in Havana, Laura Palmero, brings us a roundup of news from the Caribbean region.
Thanks for the contact. These are the most recent stories and news from Caribbean countries. And the Dominican Republic president informed about the possible solution for the crisis from August 16th.
Interviewed by El Día newspaper, the next president said that his clear priorities, and this is what he's transmitting to his collaborators, to attend to the health crisis through COVID-19, to recover the economy and maintain macroeconomic stability, to achieve an independent justice system and to implement reforms to adapt public administration. He also referred to corruption and impunity, about which he said that there can be no fresh start. With respect to the issue of COVID-19, he said that his government will increase the capacity to carry out tests, especially CPR, the hospital capacity, especially to intensive care units, and the beds available in Gran Santo Domingo and the city of Santiago, which is where the greatest concentration of positive cases is taking place.
We are working in all the areas, the most important government areas, getting ready to give real hope in that change that our Dominican people is expecting, for them to really feel the changes. We have a plan for relaunching the economy. The plan will include the construction sector, which depends on government, and we can also apply this plan for homes and aqueducts. The agricultural sector is one of the most important for the government in this relaunch, the industrial sector and the free zone. With the free zone, we are expecting to create lots of jobs for those people who require it.
This Friday, Bahamas recorded 32 new COVID-19 cases in the past 24 hours. This nation had showing an increase in novel coronavirus infections after reopening its borders in June. According to the Ministry of Health, the 37 cases recorded yesterday, 32 are from Grand Bahama and 5 from the island of New Providence, with a hospitalization increase of 33% since the previous day. Grand Bahama has the highest number of COVID-19 cases, followed by the province 185 cases and Bimini with 21 cases. With thousands of nurses and physicians quarantined after being potentially exposed to the novel coronavirus, the lack of labor is starting again to pressure the Bahamian healthcare personnel. Until last Thursday, Bahamas completed 4,143 COVID-19 tests with 380 active cases, 91 recoveries and 11 deaths.
St. Vincent's and Grenadines Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves showed his solidarity with Cuban people amidst COVID-19 pandemic and against the blockade for over 60 years from United States against Cuba.
Gonsalves described the policy as inhumane and highlighted that it not only affects Cuba, since it prevents its full trade for third nations. The Prime Minister exemplified the bank obstacles which, as a result of the blockade, prevent transactions with Havana for the purchase of drug Herbert Prot B and met with excellent outcomes in the treatment of diabetic foot ulcer. Gonsalves recalled his friendship with Chavez, whom he described as a revolutionary leader who created a solidarity, anti-imperialist work and love for the Latin America and the Caribbean peoples. The tribute ended with the revelation of a painting by the artist Narisa King allogical to the Venezuelan patriots.
And these are the most recent stories and news from Caribbean countries. Let's go back with you in the studio.
Thank you, Laura, and we'll be right back after this short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. Hurricane Isaias is moving through the Caribbean region and continues its path towards the United States, which is preparing to face its impact. The weather phenomenon is expected to arrive in Florida on Saturday and threatens to strengthen to a Category 2 hurricane. U.S. authorities have issued a hurricane alert on the East Coast. The hurricane will move through Bahamas this Friday, where the government has already declared a preventative curfew and set up 100 evacuation shelters. In Cuba, storm surges are reported in the northeastern region, with waves 4 to 6 meters high. The storm left at least one person dead in the Dominican Republic, as well as causing damage to infrastructure, water supplies and power lines, while 700 homes were damaged and at least 79 people displaced due to the strong rains and flooding. And as Hurricane Isaias heads north and approaches South Florida, U.S. residents are preparing for a difficult situation in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. Our correspondent Jorge Estoso has the details.
Thank you. At this hour, Hurricane Isaias is heading northwest and it's expected to hit the coast of the South Florida probably tomorrow night, Saturday night. We are anticipating showers of a lot of rain, and there is an extremely difficulty because of the coronavirus. Shelters could be absolutely organized in a different way because authorities are trying to reorganize the situation according to this new virus. In the case of North Carolina, we're talking that the governor of North Carolina says that he recommends people to go to shelters as the last resource, trying to go to hotels if they could, going to friends' places if they could try to possibly avoid, and shelters could be divided in two cases. In the cases of people who feel okay, to trying to respect the social distancing, and people who are feeling some symptoms that could be of coronavirus, that could be going to special shelters. So the impact of Hurricane Isaias could be hitting all the Northeast throughout the coming days. We're talking that North Carolina is expecting probably hitting their coast by in the night of Monday or even early on Tuesday, but of course the path, the situation is very fluid. We get back to you now.
Thank you, Jorge. On Thursday, Spain reported its highest number of novel coronavirus cases in almost 3 months as authorities work to contain new outbreaks. According to government data, over 1,200 new COVID-19 cases were recorded in a 24-hour period, marking the largest rise since the lockdown was lifted on June 21st. Thursday's figure meant that Spain recorded more than 1,000 new infections for a second day in a row. To date, the European country has confirmed over 335,000 COVID-19 cases and more than 28,000 deaths.
Traditionally, WHO provides a global service in the area of global goods.
We are still in a pandemic. The virus has not faded and will not until we have a vaccine, perhaps by the end of the year according to the latest reports. The truth is that, meanwhile, the virus is circulating. Although we can detect cases early in a massive way, isolate them and reduce the risk of the population, we have to maintain tension and maintain precautionary measures.
On Friday, the governor of the Japanese capital, Tokyo, reported that the city had set another record high in the number of new daily COVID-19 cases. Governor Yuriko Koike said that 463 new cases had been confirmed in the city. In an effort to curb the new spike in infections, the governor announced that restaurants and karaoke parlours would be asked to shorten their working hours starting next week. Japanese authorities have not imposed a total lockdown, but asked businesses to close and people to work from home after the government issued a national state of emergency in April. The country has so far reported over 33,000 COVID-19 cases and just over 1,000 deaths.
You might have plans or events for the summer, but unfortunately, this summer will be different from last summer. We cannot loosen our grips on anti-infection measures, and I want to share this mindset with all you all. Cooperating with business in Tokyo, we will keep speeding up anti-infection measures.
We have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei stressed that his country will not negotiate with the United States after Washington threatened to impose further sanctions if the UN arms embargo against Iran is lifted.
The political system in the United States is aimed at harming vital components of the Islamic Republic of Iran. They say you must give up our defense capabilities, you must give up your regional strength and your national power. That is not possible. Any human being who possesses honor and wants to protect the country's interests will not give in. This is what negotiations are about, and that is why I am opposed to talks. Donald Trump benefits from negotiations with Iran. This poor old man who is now in charge in America used talks with North Korea as propaganda for his own benefit. Now he wants to use talks with Iran in his favor for elections or other things. He is seeking personal benefits.
Iraqi authorities announced on Friday that parliamentary elections will be held in June 2021.
I announce that June 6, 2021 has been fixed as the day for the next legislative elections. Everything will be done to protect and ensure the success of these polls. The election will take place with the presence of international observers, and we pledge to give all the candidates protection and equality during the election. It will not be affected by the guns, nor will it go against the people's will.
On Friday, Indonesia's resort island of Bali reopened to domestic tourists after an almost 4-month lockdown due to the coronavirus pandemic. Bali's governor had been eager to revive the economy and began easing restrictions on public activities 3 weeks ago. Indonesians visiting the island will face strict rules at hotels, restaurants and beaches. Meanwhile, foreign tourists will be allowed to travel to Bali from September 11th. Tourism is the main source of income for Bali, which welcomed 6 million tourists from abroad and 10 million from Indonesia last year. People in Afghanistan started visiting mosques on the first day of the Islamic festival of Eid al-Adha this Friday, as the Taliban and Afghan security forces began a 3-day ceasefire. The temporary truce is a rare respite that many hope will lead to peace talks and an eventual end to almost 2 decades of conflict. The halt in fighting is set to last for the duration of the festivities and is the 3rd official ceasefire in nearly 19 years of war. President Ashraf Ghani and the Taliban have both signalled that peace talks could begin straight after Eid, and there were widespread calls for the warring parties to extend the ceasefire. And as the conflict continues in Afghanistan, it was reported that a suicide bombing in the eastern Logar province killed at least 9 people and wounded at least 40 just hours before the ceasefire came into effect. The attack occurred in the provincial capital of Pol-el-Alam and targeted a police checkpoint. According to an Interior Ministry spokesman, 6 of the victims were police and 3 were civilians. The majority of those wounded were civilians. Witnesses at the hospital treating the victims reported seeing several children among those who were hurt in the bombing. The Taliban has denied responsibility for the attack.
It was a very powerful explosion. Even in the villages nearby, the windows of all houses were broken. After I heard the sound of the explosion, I rushed to the site and saw it. It was a car bomb explosion, and dead bodies and wounded victims of civilians and military personnel were lying everywhere.
Niger will celebrate the 60th anniversary of its independence on Monday. On the Abdou Moumouni University campus of Niamey, students have argued that independence has not yet allowed their state to develop and enjoy full political and economic freedoms.
It is true that independence has enabled our country to gain international sovereignty, but in practice these independences have been rendered meaningless in that you realize we are effectively still dependent. Even in the industrial sector, you know that 2 leading companies that employ the greatest number of Nigerians are French companies. So far, external influences on our different governments have been significant. Basically, in the case of Niger, we do not decide on many of our resources. And even with the political game, the play is dictated from elsewhere. So I think that we must realize that we are not independent.
And we've come to the end of this news brief, but we finish with a video of Havana city historian Eusebio Leal, who dedicated his life to the Cuban capital and passed away this Friday. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website and on our social media pages. For FtS English, I'm Katrina Goss, and thank you for watching.
Yo no aspiro a nada, no aspiro ni siquiera a eso que llaman la posteridad. Yo no aspiro a nada, yo solo aspiro a haber sido útil. Y le pido perdón a todos aquellos que a lo largo de la vida, en la búsqueda necesaria de lo que creí mi verdad, pueda haber ofendido. Y a mis propios errores que cometí con la pasión juvenil en que todo hombre y todo pueblo busca sus propios caminos. Yo creo que al final lo encontré, y que esa luz que veo ahora ahí en medio de las tinieblas del ocaso es finalmente el camino.